You're listening to the Friends Talking Nerdy Podcast Network.
Friends Talking Nerdy. If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
This episode of Friends Talking Nerdy is brought to you by marijuana, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems. Hello everyone, this is Tim the Nerd coming at you with another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy, and joining me in the squeaky flatulent seat next to me, we have the greatest legal mind in the Pacific Northwest, Professor Aubrey.
Hello, hello. I hope everyone is having a great week, and, we're going to school you on some things today, and hope you enjoy it. And, yeah.
Well, come on, birthday girl. How's that going?
It was my birthday just a couple of days ago, and I had a really awesome party over the weekend. Lots of friends, and it was a pool party on a 94-degree day in Portland, so kind of perfect. So had a good time doing that. Was supposed to have family dinner with my mom and sister and you tonight, but unfortunately my mom got COVID. Yeah, it's very sad.
Didn't she have it before then?
She's never had it before.
Ooh.
Yeah, she's never had it before. She's older.
Yeah.
It's really upsetting. And she got it we're pretty sure that she must have gotten it from her interactions with people at the rehab center where my dad is staying.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So that was a bummer. Other bummers included the 4-alarm apartment fire that burned down a 114-year-old Portland apartment building in downtown Portland. The day before the fire, the Portland BDS, the Bureau of Development Services, inspected that apartment building and found fire code violations. And then the next day, they say a fire started in a third-floor apartment, spread to the rest of the building. So that happened in Portland, and I found that really interesting, right? Like, it smells of intrigue. It smells like maybe somebody did something on purpose. I don't know. Like,
For the insurance
money because they didn't want to maintain the building.
Anybody hurt? I mean...
Not as far as I know.
Well, that's good, at least.
Yeah.
It's just they're going to have to go looking for places in the wonderful Portland housing market.
Yeah, and the May Apartments was about as cheap as you could get. So...
Yeah.
It's going to be people who don't have a lot of choices.
Yeah. Anyway...
I'm just else? Debbie Downer.
Apparently, wow.
Whoa! It's actually been a great week so far.
Apart from the fire.
Apart from the terrible fire. Because we got some kitties.
Yes, we did. My girls are home.
Home at last.
Yes, we had... we were originally going to get my new feline children on this past Monday, but as luck would have it, my oldest, Isaac, was available on Sunday to come pick me up and to pick up my new feline children. He's moving to a place where he's not going to be able to take them. It's a mother and a daughter, and the daughter was born in January, and it's like I had the ability to help because if he brought them to a shelter, they're getting separated. And more than likely, if he had to give them out to other people, it's not a guarantee that, people would be able to take two at once. But yeah, it was quite fun, and I decided on what their names were, and I think I already mentioned it last week, but the big one is Mimsy, from the character from South Park. The little one is Annie. She's a little spitball of fire.
Yeah, she's a spitfire for sure, and not a spitball of fire.
Whatever.
Is that when you make a spitball and then you like light it on fire and then try to like throw fire bombs at people?
No, or maybe it's just like eating hot Cheetos and doing a spitball. I don't know. I guess in your eye you can get pink eye.
Oh yeah, you get pink eye.
Yeah, something like that.
Anyhow, yes, they are very cute. When you said the big one, you mean a very, very small cat. Like, Mimsy is a very small cat, even though she's 2 years old. She's only, and for a 6-month-old, Annie is teensy weensy. She looks more like an 8-week-old.
She looks a little bigger than that, but the drive home was definitely funny, because I brought a big box, and because we didn't have access to a cat carrier, so I had a big box, one to where they would be able to move around as they wish, and Isaac ended up putting in a blanket in that box that they slept with. So we put them in the box. I pick it up, and immediately they're both like, "What the hell is going on here?" In the box, like, "Oh, are we stable here?" And then we get outside, and it starts. They're both moving around in the box, looking out, and Annie's like, "Oh my God, what's that? I've never seen that before. Oh my goodness, what's that? What's that light? Oh my God, I've never smelled that before. Whoa!" And then Mimsy is like me when I go outside, like, "What the fuck was that? Oh my God, what is that smell? Is it gonna kill me? No!"
Yeah, Mimsy's like a little bit hypervigilant, a little bit on edge. So, hopefully she'll relax a little bit.
But to be clear, though, she definitely sees the both of us as cool people. She does not see us as a threat, and she often will come up to us for love and all that. But, for example, when the professor came home today, put her keys in the lock and opened it up, that scared Mimsy. But it's a new atmosphere, and imagine being a cat. And going from one place to another, you don't have any way for the humans to be able to properly communicate what's going on. It's just everything's new, and all the noises too, because you mentioned small. Imagine being that small and hearing that type of noise. I mean, not knowing the origin, would be scary.
Totally. But I think they're adjusting really well.
That I do.
So they've been here 4 days. It's not very long, and they seem pretty comfy.
Especially Annie. Like, I came home today, my legs were sore, so I immediately just lied down on the couch, and she just hopped up and got on my chest and just started hanging out there. So I'm definitely digging that.
Yeah, she basically hung out on the desk right next to me most of the day.
Yes. And this is, I think we'll end the cat talk here, because if you've listened to us long enough, you know that this is something we're going to talk about again and again and again. We'll have new stories of Annie and Mimsy next week.
That's right. They'll have their own little segment.
The Annie and Mimsy corner, or something. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, we could have puppets and stuff. We could do that for our Patreon.
There you go. Yeah. The professor and I, now that things are finally getting to a point where, if for me at least, it feels like, things are kind of settling down in a good way. Things are not in flux, as to what, the future could potentially hold and all that stuff. So it seems like now is the perfect time for me to take advantage of that spirit and actually execute on some of the plans that, we've discussed on air at times even, about promo stuff that we want to do for the show because we want to grow it. Now, one thing that we're not going to be doing is really focusing on social media much anymore. We're not deleting the accounts. Everything's still going to be there, but there's tumbleweeds. I mean, I'm the primary person, adding to that. Like, we got people there. People are seeing the stuff on social media, but it's a passive audience, and because of that, I've done some experiments the past couple weeks in terms of how much I promote the show, and notice there's no real change in the amount of people listening. So I've already expressed my displeasure with social media as is, so what I did is deleted Facebook and Instagram, the apps, from my mobile devices. The accounts are still there. They're still available on my computer, when I, go to the internet and all that. So, again, nothing is being deleted. You don't have to worry about a new place to find us, but will I be as active? No. And I'm cool with that now because, again, like, for me, social media has just gotten so old because, again, you're trying to get people's attention, and it's like, how? And I don't want to be annoying, I guess. I don't want to be that person that has, a commercial on their social media page every 6 hours or something like that every single day. I don't want to be annoying like that in spam. I want to be able to build and interact with the audience. I want to be able to make them more active and go from there. And I think from there, if we did have a more active audience, and there's nothing wrong with active or passive, not knocking anybody here, but I think if we do find that way to build a better active audience, then and if we had them on Patreon, because members are able to talk to the creators they support on Patreon, then we'd have a better understanding of what works for them as far as our show.
Right, it'd be great to know what people are most interested in.
Indeed. So these are plans in the works. We don't have anything to announce at the moment here, folks, but within the next couple of weeks, because financially this is probably the best time, strike while the oil's hot, or the gold is something, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm a little hot.
Strike while the gold is on fire.
Some sports ball. Anyway. Before we go on to our main topic here, we have to send some congratulations to friend of the show, Becca Baldwin.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. She was on our episode. It's been a while, and I don't recall the specific one, but we had a writers group episode, and she was involved in that. And she has a new book that's out, available on the Kindle and on a paperback. And if you go to Amazon.com, the link will be in our show description. You'll be able to check out the book. She's a romance writer, and her book is called 3 Wishes.
And it's got a very luscious-looking cover.
Yes, just thirst trap all the way, folks. Mm-hmm. It's like one of those things where, 50, 60-year-old women are, clutching their pearls at the grocery store when they see this book cover and go, ooh, and, thinking what they'll do later.
That looks so titillating.
It's so wrong. I'll buy 5. But as a little teaser, how about I read the summary of the book?
Okay.
All right. Dee Kavanaugh thinks she has it all. A good job, great friends, and a guy who's crazy about her. The 3 wishes she'd had since childhood are all hers. Or so she thinks. When her so-called loving boyfriend dumps her unexpectedly, Dee is blindsided, and quickly the life she's built starts to fall apart. After months of wallowing, all that changes with a new job and the chance to start over. Cautiously, Dee moves on, but quickly finds herself faced with yet another enticing and all too irresistible obstacle. One that comes in the form of a sexy, former football player with warm brown eyes, a deep voice, massive shoulders, and whose kisses melt your panties right off.
They melt your panties off?
Melt them right off. A man she tells herself she doesn't need in her life, but just can't seem to stay away from. After a bitter, contemptuous divorce, Travis McDaniel is moving on. Focused on raising his 4-year-old daughter and beginning his legal career, he's ready to start the next chapter of his life. When he realizes that chapter also includes a whip-smart, sassy brunette with arresting blue eyes, he'll do anything to make her his, even if it means waiting for her. What happens when these forces collide? Does it all fall to pieces, or do they get their happily ever after? Find out in 3 Wishes, a contemporary romance standalone. It can also be read as part of a series starting with Second Chances.
Cool.
So definitely check out her book there. I'm not going to lie. Am I the biggest fan of the romance genre? No, not really. It's not usually my thing. But I think like any other form, specific, genre like that is more about eliciting emotion and not like the deep intellectual stuff. Mm-hmm. I think people tend to get a little weird. Not weird, but what is that? The gatekeeping. The writers love to gatekeep. If you are writing a specific genre that doesn't fall into their wheelhouse of what is good writing, then you're just bad. And there are plenty of good examples of writers in the romance genre. There are. I mean, why would Jackie Collins sell so many books if she was that bad? Something she's doing is working. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean she's Mark Twain, doesn't mean she's Emily Dickinson, but it worked when she was alive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it can be really disheartening when bad things happen to good people. I'm sorry. We're a little stoned in the Friends Talking Nerdy studios this evening.
Huh?
Well, I have no idea what's going on.
Dave's not here, man.
Where's my car?
Well, I guess I'm a little less high. Than you are, but I will end what I said right there because, but definitely please check out Becca Baldwin's book. Like I said, if you head to the show description, the link for the book will be there. She's a friend of the show, and I will do my best to support anybody I know in a creative endeavor. That's just the right thing to do.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right. Well, congratulations, Becca. And it sounds interesting to me. I might check it out.
Yes, and it might melt your panties off.
Well, I think it will.
And we'll have to find out next week, folks. Will Professor Aubrey's panties be melted off?
Will they be melted right off?
They were only partially off. They're still on my left leg.
It took a few minutes for it to start. I don't know if it was right.
Well, I give the book 2 stars. I'm kidding. Anyway, speaking of drugs, let's talk about drugs.
Let's talk about some other drugs.
Yes, this week we wanted to talk about the pros and cons of psychedelics in psychiatry. We are finally getting to a point in this country to where legally some of the stranglehold that the government has had on whether people can, test medically certain types of substances, that are considered illegal, have been loosened. To the point where, more scientists are able to do more studies on, stuff like LSD, mushrooms, and all that stuff. And Portland is quite progressive in that regards. They definitely allow their citizens legally to have certain levels of these substances, even though they are illegal in most other places in the country. But I think it is important because there has been, look at weed, for example. And weed is not on the list that we're going to be talking about here. But, there are so many positive uses of marijuana. There just are that can help, physical ailments, that can help mental health. It can help, if you think of the cancer patients who smoke a little weed and in order to regain their appetite.
The epileptics, the people with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, it's been shown to be beneficial for all types, all kinds of medical conditions. The other thing about cannabis is that everybody does it, so who cares? Like, at what point in this country are we going to be like, everybody does it, so who cares?
I mean, you got to take a look at when. I mean, it started, I believe, in terms of the intensity with the war on drugs. Thank you, Nixon, and that the war on drugs was explicitly created to find a way to target, minorities and college students that were disruptors, like your Abby Hoffmans at that particular time, but doing it and framing it in a way that seems like it's a public service. Mm-hmm. And that's all the war on drugs was, because, when you have poor neighborhoods, they're going to congregate to the poorer drugs, and when you make those poorer drugs the ones that have the stiffer penalties, you're targeting those people, like crack and cocaine.
And they're the most addictive at times, right? Certainly compared to some of the drugs we're going to talk about here tonight, which are a different category of drug than cannabis. They're psychedelics. Openers.
Yes, we're gonna ride a yellow submarine and see Puff the Magic Dragon and go knock knocking on heaven's door. Mm-hmm. We're gonna be talking about psychedelics and their effects here, but before we begin our talk, do you have a history with psychedelics? Do you have a story you can share that you are comfortable sharing? If not, then we can go to me.
I do have a history with psychedelics, and I currently use psychedelics of various sorts. I find them very helpful in clarifying feelings, thoughts, that sort of thing. So yes, so a story might be just the joy and connection that can come from psychedelics if you're doing them in a group or you're experiencing it with someone else. I think that I've never done psychedelics and been by myself. It's always something I've done to be connected to other people.
Yeah, I've taken psychedelics alone. No shocker, I know. But I more lately, I guess, with some of the ones that are on this list, I've dabbled the past few years. It's in my 20s. I think I've talked about it on the show before. I took LSD a couple of times, and thankfully, the first time I took it, I had a day off the next day because I didn't realize how long it would go. But that was the day that Die Hard was playing on the TV, and I had my eyes closed, and I was in Die Hard, and it was fucking awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just imagine seeing John McClane jumping off the top of Nakatomi Tower with the explosions from the helicopters, and you're there. You're there.
You're in it.
Yes.
You feel the explosions rumble.
Yep. Kind of like at the holodeck or something like that. Mm-hmm. But to be clear, I mean, these were drugs that had, an origin at some place, or in terms of, scientific research, there were definitely things that they've done in the past. But, once the war on drugs happened, they made it a lot harder for, colleges and scientists to study this, because if it's illegal, a school has a way to get some, but maybe not as much as they would do for alcohol or tobacco or something like that. Mm-hmm. Just because of it being an illegal product, you'd have to have 500 people sign off on it or something like that.
Right, it would just become administratively
not worth it,
and so people wouldn't do it. Yeah,
but we are out of time to, again, I don't know how many times I've said that, indeed, there you go. But we are going to be talking about, some of the the history of some of these drugs that are currently being used in psychology, which also goes into some of the study that has been done into this as well. Very good article here, and for any episode that we have like this, of course, the link to this article is going to be in the show description from there. But how about you start things off? What are psychedelics?
All right, let me tell you what psychedelics are. They are mind-altering drugs that can expand consciousness and impact sensory perceptions. There are many such substances, some that occur in nature, while others are chemical compounds developed in laboratories. 4 of the most commonly discussed drugs currently gaining traction in the field of psychiatry are psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, and ketamine.
Quite the smorgasbord there of psychedelics.
And I feel like, people have heard of psilocybin or magic mushrooms or mushrooms, and they've heard of LSD, but maybe they don't know much about MDMA or ketamine because they're relatively, have become popular relatively recently.
Yeah, I do remember that South Park episode, the stupid spoiled whore video playset episode, where the girls were pretending to be like Paris Hilton, and they talked about getting ketamine, and one girl said we should get some ketamine, and the other girl was like, "What is that?" And the first one was like, "I don't know, but Paris Hilton does it." Mm-hmm. But yeah, definitely. And once we start talking about them, we can bring up specific experiences if we want. But again, the reason we're going through this is, in terms of talking about. I think you mentioned it. I mean, for people that aren't aware of these types of drugs, the media will tend to make you really scared. A lot of times. I mean, look at there was the perception at some point that marijuana was a gateway drug, and people actually believed that. And I'm sure there are still people in this country that still believe that, even though there is no evidence whatsoever. But it's important to talk about their history. So how about I start?
Yeah, why don't you start with the first one?
Psilocybin. Have you heard of magic mushrooms? These natural substances contain a psychoactive compound called psilocybin that can alter thoughts and perceptions and cause visual and auditory hallucinations at high doses. The psychedelic effects of psilocybin include feeling like time has slowed down, a sense of euphoria, seeing colors more vividly, thinking unusual thoughts, and seeing stationary objects appear to move. I think of that Bill Hicks bit when he talked about when you're taking mushrooms and then you realize that mushrooms come from cow turds.
Yeah, you don't want to think about that. Just like I don't like to think about eggs and where eggs come from because I've seen what chickens eat.
Yeah, they have an eclectic diet, but I've taken mushrooms myself before, like in terms of some of the effects that they talked about here. I think the seeing colors more vividly was the height of what I had. I don't think you could call the doses I took anywhere near a dose that could actually have some fun. But even then though, the colors thing was definitely quite the feeling, because when it comes to stuff like that, I rarely have a bad time with it, and even if it's not the most mind-blowing, this is the greatest experience ever, it still was fun. Seeing colors in a different way, seeing things just seem brighter,
more crisp.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely enjoy mushrooms and various, what I think is interesting about mushrooms is that though they're the same fungus, every one of them is different. They're as unique as we are. And so you don't know, if you're like a cap and stem kind of person, you don't know that one cap and one stem is equivalent to another cap or another stem, right? So weight doesn't matter. So the only way to get a homogeneous thing is to grind it up and put it in capsules. That's the only thing I know about.
Well, the taste is what I didn't like, because I guess to be able to get somewhere near, fun effects or, something like that happening, you have to eat a decent amount, and they are tough to get down.
They really are.
Just like dry. It's like eating paint chips. Mm-hmm. Or bark.
Yeah. Other things you can do with them include making tea. A lot of people make mushroom tea, and you can also bake them in things.
Yeah, and there is a mushroom store down the block. I mean, I don't know what type of mushrooms, but Portland being Portland, I'm sure it's the fun mushrooms.
Well, I doubt it. It's not legal to sell them.
No.
It's only legal to have them.
Maybe you're buying a card. Or, I don't know. Enough with the thinking, Tim.
Stop thinking, Tim.
All right, how about you go on with the next one? Okay,
so the next one is MDMA. Commonly known as ecstasy or Molly, 3,4-methyl
MDMA.
Dioxymethyl.
She's gonna do it.
Amphetamine.
She's gonna do it. Yay.
MDMA. Ooh, MDMA is a mood-altering chemical that produces enhanced sensory perception and feelings of closeness to others. That's a very short explanation of MDMA. As we know, we get back, as we get through the article, we're going to get into the pros and cons of using these substances in psychotherapy.
Oh yeah, because as always, you wouldn't want us on a jury of someone who, for simple possession of a drug or something like that. If you do take drugs of any sort, and I'm also including alcohol and tobaccos, act responsibly.
Yeah, don't take our advice about anything. We have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
No one should rely on anything that we say for any purpose.
Yep.
We're just like South Park. You shouldn't even be listening to this podcast. That's how wrong it is. So don't ever believe anything that we say. We're just making it up, folks.
Exactly. All right, this is getting weird.
I just don't want people to say Tim and Aubrey told me to.
Oh, I know.
Do MDMA.
Yes. No, we be responsible. Make your own decisions. Don't do it all. But ecstasy has been fun the times I've tried it.
Cool.
Yeah.
What did you like about it?
Well, it did feel like that part of my brain that, is closed off, that it doesn't like to talk that much, was, told to sleep for a bit. And I was talking a lot more. In fact, there might be some evidence of it on episodes of Friends Talking Nerdy. But, I liked that. Because there are some drugs, like alcohol or something like that, to where, when you get high off of that drug or you're drunk or something like that, you have physical ill effects or your perception is messed up. But, with ecstasy, you were still very much in control. It's just made you happier.
Yeah, you're just totally not inebriated or impaired in any way, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you got pulled over, you just want to give the officer a hug.
Right? Just be like, hey, man. I don't know. I've never driven on any of these substances, and I absolutely don't recommend that anybody do that.
Of course not. Because you don't, even though you think you know your limits, you don't know your limits. And it could just take one wrong move to, have, just a simple, I'm just going to the store to get something, turn into years of legal woes.
Or somebody's death.
That too. That would be
that's the worst thing. Okay, on that happy note, let's talk about LSD.
All right. Discovered in the 1950s by Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann, lysergic acid dilithiumide, LSD, was made available to the psychiatric research community. By the following decade, over 130 studies on the substance showed it had produced positive results in a range of mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, and alcohol abuse. In the 1970s, however, following a surge in the recreational use of LSD and instances of bad trips, the drug was banned. And yeah, I mean, the big name that was the cheerleader for LSD in the 60s, Timothy Leary, was probably one of the worst people, to be a cheerleader for LSD, because he, took it recreationally himself and was on a constant high. Mm-hmm. And just in the late 60s, early 70s, it was easy to make him a villain. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to say, Timothy Leary's, ideas were bad or anything like that. But, when you abuse it, and it's possible, to abuse any type of drug out there, when you abuse it and still go out in public and whatever, people aren't going to take you seriously.
Right.
It would be like a drunk Axl Rose in the 80s, talking about alcohol,
Right. Yeah, I see what you mean.
But, like I said, LSD, I've had a couple of experiences in my 20s. Like the second time was the day of the Republican National Convention in 2000, where Dick Cheney was announced as the nominee for vice president on the Republican ticket. And I sat there and watched the entire news coverage, mind you, wondering what day it was. I mean, because I'm sure they probably mentioned the day multiple times,
right?
Coming back from commercial and all that, but I didn't know what day it was.
Like, do you mean you didn't know the number of the date, or you didn't know Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
I didn't, both.
Okay.
Like, I just didn't know. So that trip was different because, it just was more of a perception in some ways. It wasn't as visual as the Die Hard one. Uh-huh. But, yeah.
The Die Hard one is epic. It's pretty epic.
Yippee-ki-yay, but go on to ketamine.
Okay, let's talk about ketamine. Developed more than half a century ago, ketamine is an anesthetic that dulls pain and makes people feel dissociated from their body. This substance can have hallucinogenic effects and has been used as a recreational drug with the nickname Special K, which I have never heard anyone
Special K
call it Special K. You don't even... Yeah, I don't know.
First I heard about this was Keith Moon. In the 70s, The Who were playing a concert in San Francisco, and Keith Moon took what was described as a heroic dose of ketamine before the show started, and just as the show was starting, he got in a couple of songs, but then fell asleep. They were able to revive him, but he took so much that he ended up falling asleep again. So Pete Townsend had to get on the mic and say, does anybody here know how to play the drums? And they found a guy that was able to play some basic stuff, so they played like old songs from the 50s and stuff like that. And there's video of it, and that fan had the time of his life. But that's the first I heard of it, and I've tried it myself, and it was interesting.
Yeah, it's super weird.
Yeah, speaking of not knowing the time, because like the first time, for me was like, it felt like the experience happened over like a 10-hour period, and it was probably 40 minutes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Especially the first time you do something, your time perception can be off because you're not used to the experience of time passing when you're in that altered state.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't be like, oh, that's been 10 minutes. Because in that altered state, it feels...
like hours, man.
Like hours, man.
But the benefit...
It's like you're on a different planet, and the planet has a really, like, short orbit, and so like it takes forever for it to get around the sun. Or another planet has a really short day and it goes around the sun a lot, and those would be two different experiences.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right. So there are pros and cons of microdosing psychedelics.
Well, let's talk about microdosing for a second, because I don't think they explain this actually.
Mm-hmm.
Microdosing is where you take very small amounts on a daily or almost daily basis. It needs to be done in conjunction with therapy. But lots of people microdose mushrooms in particular. And, as it's a natural substance, it feels like taking it every day, and microdosing it is not going to have any detrimental impacts on a person. Some of these other chemicals do have detrimental impacts if you use them too much. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be very mindful of not using too much over a certain period of time.
Yeah, and that's what some of these pros and cons here are going to talk about, because, with any type of substance like this that can affect your body in like this. Anyway, I feel like Porky Pig right now. There are pros and cons, because not everybody is going to be. You're not going to have a uniformed way of how this drug affects people. Someone who's 5'2" and 100 pounds is going to have a different experience compared to someone who's 6'5" and 240. And we're not even taking into account stuff like allergies or other issues that could happen as well, or just a bad trip. Mm-hmm. But how about you start with psilocybin, talk about some of the pros, and then talk about the downsides.
Okay, so research points to potential benefits for the administration of this substance in a clinical setting. A 2021 study in JAMA Psychiatry involving 24 people with major depressive disorder found that psilocybin-assisted therapy produced large, rapid, and sustained antidepressant effects. Other research from 2021 in the New England Journal of Medicine on people with moderate to severe depression showed that treatment with psilocybin was equally as effective as treatment with the common antidepressant, which they used the antidepressant Lexapro. Mm-hmm. So those are the upsides, right? That they show great promise, particularly with major and severe and moderate depression. The downsides are that some people who ingest magic mushrooms experience negative reactions, such as anxiety, panic attacks, paranoia, feelings of fear and depression, nausea, and numbness.
Which shows the importance of why you would do something like this in a professional setting, because, you want to be able to have somebody that you can talk to about, hey, this is what I'm feeling, so that person can, say, hey, maybe it's a little too high, maybe we need to take it down a little bit, or, in the case of this, maybe you don't need to do it. maybe other options are going to be better for you if they're making you feel this way.
Yeah.
All right. How about we go to ecstasy?
All right.
A 2021 randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled Phase 3 clinical trial appearing in Nature Medicine looked at the impact of MDMA-assisted therapy on individuals suffering from severe PTSD. Following the treatment, 67% of participants no longer met the diagnostic criteria for PTSD. The researchers concluded that MDMA-assisted therapy represents a potential breakthrough treatment that merits expedited clinical evaluation. The downsides: blurred vision, nausea, clenched teeth, nausea,
double nausea,
sweating, and chills, and nausea are some of the unwanted effects of taking MDMA. And, that is important to remember. It's like a lot of these substances will make your body feel feel different. And, if you are doing this for therapy purposes, but you also happen to be a truck driver, blurred vision is probably not the best thing to have. So, again, the importance here of why, medical professionals should be involved in this. And I think it is also very good to see that, scientists are able to actually do some of these studies to show lawmakers, because, while I feel all drugs should be legal, I have no problem with regulations, because I don't feel you should be giving, an 8-ball of crack to an 8-year-old, just like you shouldn't give them a bottle of Jack Daniels.
Now, shouldn't their parents decide? Why do we have this nanny state needing to take care of our children for us?
Because think about that dark hole you can go with that. I think in terms of basics, think about Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses think it's their religious belief that they shouldn't have blood transfusions. Now, think if your kid had a disease and needed a blood transfusion. Is the parent right for their religious belief in not getting that kid a blood transfusion, or do you think the state is right by stepping in? Because what would happen in a situation, the kid's not going to get taken away, but if there is need for medical treatment that involves blood transfusion, a third party will temporarily gain guardianship over those kids that take them to the doctor to get whatever medical help they need.
Don't you think that's just a weird loophole?
I'm not denying the fact that there is an argument there, but I think when it comes to overall public safety, and I think too when it comes with what we know scientifically about blood transfusions today, blood transfusions blood transfusion, and if you hear that crinkling, that's Annie, folks. Blood transfusions do go wrong on occasion. It's not unheard of for a blood transfusion to lead to complications, could lead to something much worse happening. Accidents happen. They're not perfect, but the science is there to show that 99% of the time a blood transfusion is going to be effective and healthy and, going to help you out in a particular situation. And I think if we have a situation like that, I think that's one time the government has a right to say, yeah, we need to take these kids to get them to proper health. Because if you're allowing that, why not allow that? What if there's a religion that has, child
human
marriage? Human sacrifice, or they teach their people to steal. I don't know. It's a tricky balance, freedom and your role in society, because you do have a role. Because if people did their own thing, society would break down, if that makes sense. Just each going off and doing their own thing. We work for this to work. We have to work together. That's why we have paved roads. That's why we have, fire departments. That's why, we have plenty of other things here. And yeah, we just can't. You get what I'm saying. I'm not saying people should have their kids taken away at every chance, but I think that there is a reasonable call for action based on standards that society deems should be discouraged.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about this because I think about the law a lot, and the law is basically the social contract, right, in written form, and it exists, right, and it's the basis of how we regulate our own behavior and that of our fellow people.
Yeah, and people being people, they will make bad choices leading to bad things, and there are also evil people in the world that just like doing bad things. And that's why it's important to consider the fact that freedom and society need to be in balance. Which means, sometimes some of your freedoms would have to go if that meant the betterment of society.
Right.
So, yeah, and yeah, like, because technically, I mean, what if you wanted to have a freedom to murder people? I mean, Jeffrey Dahmer took that upon himself, and, you know, society deemed it bad. Mm-hmm. You know.
Yep.
All right. How about
Okay, let's talk about LSD.
Yes, LSD.
In a 2020 study looking at LSD and other psychedelics as possible treatment for depression, researchers suggested that low doses of psychedelics could play a role in depression by inducing some kind of cognitive flexibility, which might lead to decreased rumination. Sounds good. But the downsides are that the effects of this mind-altering drug are unpredictable and can vary from one person to another. In high doses, negative effects can include extreme mood changes, psychosis, hallucinations, and flashbacks. Which, you know, except for the psychosis part, is why I thought people took it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the flashbacks tend to come if you take a lot of LSD over a long period of time at high doses. Once you stop, it's still in your system. Like, technically, I believe, like, if I remember my history of how LSD works, like, if you take it, it stays in your system, even in small amounts. But, you know, if you do take more of it over time, it does have the ability for, like, little flashbacks to occur.
Right.
You know, so, again, the importance, you know, and this is one to where, I mean, like, it sounds like there is actual study being put into this, and it shows that it can have positive benefits, but I would think this would be more for extreme cases. I don't think someone with mild depression is going to walk in and start getting LSD treatments,
right.
Because of how unpredictable it is. You know, because, yeah, I mean, the first time I did it, there goes 16 hours of my day.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, again, folks, it is important when you are even considering, you know, taking something like this to hear the pros and the cons, because it is important to know what you're getting into. You know, I mean, because some of this, you don't want to play around with this. You know, like the first time I took LSD, like I mentioned, like I didn't know what to expect, and I was lucky I had a day off. And at first, you know, once I woke up, because I, you know, took it and then went to sleep, you know, I woke up just like, what the hell? You know, and like, yeah, having someone there that could have, you know, walked me through it, or something like that, or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super important to work with professionals on this stuff, if for no other reason, for dosing.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and I think what they're saying in this article is that LSD is very unpredictable regardless of dose. And I think that's probably true.
Yeah, which, again, I think for something like LSD, I think more than likely it would probably benefit more of your higher risk people that need it, you know, like soldiers or something like that, dealing with PTSD or something, to where they need that intensive stuff, because, you know, just average everyday depression, with the downsides of LSD being what they are, even in smaller doses, you know, it would disrupt too many people's lives, I think.
Well, but you think about the side effects of antidepressants.
True. I mean, because like the Lexapro one that they mentioned, my son, when he was on it, was suicidal.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not uncommon for people, because I think you even, some of the antidepressants you took in the past, it may have been you or someone else, I think it was you, where you had mentioned having those thoughts, and then I had said, well, you do know it has the side effect of... That may have been my ex-wife. I don't know. I'm sorry. It's late, folks.
Oh my God! You mistook me for your ex-wife.
How dare you? But but yeah, just you know, it's easy to forget that is a side effect, mm-hmm. because most people just normally associate those feelings with just feeling down. You know. So, how about you dive into ketamine?
Okay, ketamine. Numerous studies point to ketamine's positive effects on major depressive disorder. Findings in a 2013 study in the American Journal of Psychiatry showed that in people with treatment-resistant depression, ketamine quickly triggered antidepressant effects. Significant improvement in depressive symptoms among people taking ketamine was also noted in a 2017 review in Mental Health Clinician. In 2019, the Food and Drug Administration approved esketamine nasal spray, a derivative of ketamine, as a treatment for depression and treatment-resistant depression. So what are the downsides? Because it sounds pretty great, especially as someone with treatment-resistant depression.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the downsides? Well, it may be addictive. It may cause high blood pressure, dizziness, and nausea. Except for the high blood pressure and the addictiveness, that doesn't sound too bad. Dizziness and nausea, not that bad.
And the nausea will kick your ass.
That's true.
Yeah. Again, important to look at, the pros and the cons for something like this. But, what's also important is to look into what they can do to your brain. Right? Yeah. So we'll dive into the first one here, psilocybin. A 2020 brain imaging study in the journal Neuroimage looked at brain scans of people before and after taking psilocybin and found that the drug lowers activity in an area called the claustrum. This brain region is believed to be involved with setting attention and shifting tasks, which may explain why people taking psilocybin experience feelings of connectedness and a lack of ego. Interesting. So it seems like you're more willing to do the dishes on mushrooms.
Yeah, more willing to do the dishes.
I would love to.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all. MDMA triggers the release of neurotransmitters, including serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. Experts point to the heightened levels of serotonin as a primary basis for the feelings of euphoria that recreational users tend to experience. After this surge of serotonin, though, levels of the neurotransmitter may become depleted, leading to negative psychological effects. Long-term heavy use of MDMA is also associated with changes in regions of the brain associated with impulse control and attention, working memory, and visual information processing.
Yeah, I'm surprised I didn't mention this earlier with the serotonin. I mean, ecstasy is one of those drugs that you gotta be careful for, because you don't want to think that this is something that, you can take every week and have a good time. If you took it every week, you're really gonna fuck up your brain.
Oh yeah, super fuck up your brain. So MDMA is a drug that you should really only take, from what I've read, every 3 months. Or quarterly. Some people say you could take it once a month. Other people don't care and take it day after day. And, with all these things, it has to do with your brain chemistry and your body chemistry and how you process the drugs, what kind of effects they're going to have on you.
Yep. And yeah, you got to be mindful. You got to be mindful so you can make an informed decision as to how much or how little you want to take. LSD research shows that this psychoactive drug works on a variety of receptors in the brain, including serotonin and dopamine. With as much as it fires off in the brain, while you're on it. I mean, because if you are going through and seeing a trip of some sort, or you're in Die Hard, you're going to have those increased, chemicals, blasting off like
Totally. Well, research shows that ketamine alters the way the brain's neurons communicate. The substance binds to receptors that trigger the release of glutamate, an abundant neurotransmitter in the brain that is involved in memory and learning. A 2019 study in the Journal of Science suggests that ketamine promotes the growth of synapses in the brain. Although this research is a good start, there isn't information yet to know how microdosing psychedelics will affect the brain on a long-term basis. That's why more investigation is needed.
And that, I think, is really the point we're trying to get at here. The more scientists are able to look at the positives and the negatives of this, the better they will be able to say definitively this is good for public consumption with these types of regulations in place to make sure, people can only get X amount, you can only get it by X age or whatever, something like that. But, we need these studies. And these studies can... Because what I don't like about the anti-drug culture we grew up in the 80s was that it was based on lies. A lot of it was. Mm-hmm. When at the end of the day, the conversation we should be having with kids is, the same conversation we have with them about alcohol. Because... believe it or not, folks, you listening may not be a person who uses any of these drugs, and you may not have any intention of ever using them, but you would be surprised how many people have over the years that personally. You may be surprised how many people actively use it, because again, like alcohol, like tobacco, it is something that certain people can take and function and live a happy, normal life. President Barack Obama, in one of his memoirs, talked about the time he snorted cocaine, and I think he did fine. The point is, though, don't overdo it. If you do it, do something like this in terms of, helping with depression. You want to do it with a professional that's monitoring, making sure you get the right dose. But be educated. Don't listen to... don't listen to people like us, just yapping our lips, because at the end of the day, we're giving our opinion of this article right here. But, I think what we want to urge you to do more than anything is study this. The more you know, the less scary it becomes. And, especially if you're a parent, if you can sit down with your kid and say, hey, this, some people use this, it can give you this good benefit, it can give you this bad benefit, but you as a kid, it would affect you in too negative a way. So don't take it. That is going to be much more effective than, that marijuana is going to make you take heroin one day, Billy.
Right, and I mean, who's to say 15-year-olds shouldn't be smoking weed? Like, 15-year-olds been smoking weed since the beginning of time.
Yeah, I mean,
our conception of what is an adult and what is a child is a social construct, right?
Europe and wine. How many kids drink wine? Right,
to all of them. All of them. And all the people drink wine, and it's not seen as, like, negative or, it's actually very healthy to have a glass of wine. But it's about moderation.
Exactly.
And balance.
And education. So you don't do something, silly to where, because, again, the example I used earlier of, the people that don't necessarily know that, like ecstasy, if you take too much of it, can, bring you into a depressive state. If you don't know that and you take too much, it's going to mess with you. And it doesn't take that long to find legitimate, scientifically backed articles to tell you what to expect.
And I guess I just mentioned before we close that it's very important to test your drugs. So if you get any drugs, be sure that you have the proper testing equipment, which you can get through an organization called DanceSafe at dancesafe.org, where you can order test kits. And they actually, if you friend them on Instagram, they give a test kit out every Friday to a lucky commenter. So you want a test kit that will tell you that the drug you think you have is the drug you have. So if you think it's MDMA, test it, make sure it's MDMA.
This is baking soda.
Then the other kind of testing you want to do is for fentanyl. And you can do that quite easily with fentanyl test strips. You don't need a prescription for those. You can get them at the drugstore. And basically what you want to establish is that there's no fentanyl lacing or tracing in your drugs.
Yeah, be safe. If we do not officially encourage anybody to use any sort of mind-altering drugs that happen to be illegal in the area that you are in. If you just happen to do it, though, do it responsibly.
We are not encouraging anyone to do drugs of any sort. We're simply offering factual information.
Because we've already admitted it. We've used these, okay, and it doesn't mean we use it much, but we have, and we've survived. And I think again, the more people, and we've also done the research too. On the effects, I did find out the LSD stuff later, but that's another story. But, we did do the research to know what was best for us because, again, the first thing, we learned, the first thing I learned about the ecstasy was the serotonin.
Serotonin syndrome?
Yeah, the thing where because the big
you get a rush.
Yeah.
And then there's not serotonin left over. And then you get so much serotonin in your system. If you get too much serotonin in your system, it causes serotonin syndrome, which is where you don't have enough serotonin.
Yeah.
Or you have too much. I can't remember. It's bad for you, though.
It's, and just, again, do your research.
Yeah, don't listen to me for any reason.
Ever. Yeah. Except on Friends Talking Nerdy each Saturday.
Except on Friends Talking Nerdy.
Yeah, we bring this up as a conversation starter more than anything else because, again, it's important to... The more it's openly discussed in a rational tone, the less stigma there could potentially be to it, small though our audience is.
Exactly.
All right, anything else about drugs you want to talk about before we leave?
No, I just, wish everybody a good time on whatever their, deal is. Whatever their jam is right now.
Yeah, I'll say this. Hey. Smoke weed every day. Well, I think that will leave us here at the end of another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy. We thank you all for listening to us, folks. Each Saturday, we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
Farewell.
What is that?
Goodbye, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, good night.
Yes, The Sound of Music. My mother used to love that movie.
It's a great movie.
I've never watched it.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah. Me and musicals,
Yeah.
If only Lemmy made him. Well, he sort of did with Romeo and Juliet. He was the narrator.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. A Troma classic. From the Romeo and Juliet remake of Romeo and Juliet, written by James Gunn, the guy who does the Guardians of the Galaxy movies and is now president of DC Comics. And Lemmy is the narrator of a Shakespeare movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's one hell of a great movie, in my opinion. That's what Troma does best.
Cool.
Yeah. While you were doing all that law schooling, I was watching Romeo and Juliet. Look where it got me. Yeah. All right. On that note, goodbye. How does this work again?
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.